Good afternoon ladies, it's Kay here in Taunton. Bit breezy, bit humid, not very pleasant, but we'll hope that the rain that's been forecast for later gets here and does a good old clean up job on the humidity. I'm here today, as promised, to follow on from the Something Different video with the handy Hippo products. To do a tutorial on the card. Thank you very much for your comments ladies, they were very much appreciated, and without further ado we'll get on with making something on the same principle. It won't just be these colours, and I didn't have the large sentiment that I could apply again, so I have come up with something different, but it's all to the good, because what it actually ends up doing is showing the versatility of doing what I'm calling a frame card. So if I leave that there, hopefully you'll be able to catch little glimpses of it throughout. Now I'm still using, surprisingly, having used up 8 now or 9 of the square 6x6 cards, I am still using the Authentique Classique Pretty paper stack. There were 24 sheets in it, which I don't know if I mentioned before, and even with everything that I've done and what I'm doing today, I still have an amazing amount of the paper left, which will lend itself to lots and lots of different projects or more cards or whatever comes to mind as I'm doing my craft thing. I have also continued with the 6x6 card by the Paper Mania, also bought on the Handy Hippo site, because it's quite a nice size to work with. At the outset of the video, I would like to stress that the measurements I'm suggesting are for this sized card. So were you to use a different card stock or something larger, or even indeed something smaller, you will need to adapt your sizings accordingly. So this is the card that we will build on today. Again, superb quality, you can't fault it with matching envelope. I'm putting the card aside here because what we're going to work on is the embellishment for the top of the card, and we don't need the base particularly at this point, so I'm bringing in what I'm going to use to make this card so that you can see what we're doing. Another sheet from the Authentique paper pack, mirror card, the black candy shop embellishments, the lovely Tim Holtz flower die that I just had to use again and again and again, a contrasting piece of card that will allow the flower to sit on it in that manner, some brads just from an ordinary little stock or from my stash, silicone because for this it's particularly effective, a metal ruler which is indeed quite important because we're going to use a craft knife and you really don't want to use wood or plastic because you may well cut into it or cause yourself problems, so that's quite a must if you're using it with a craft knife. Some more of the mirror of the beautiful Italian range ribbon and some double-sided tape. So having said all of that, I took my card, decided on the colour coordination that I wanted to use, and then cut to size by simply deciding what and where I wanted to place the various layers onto the card. So I've chosen to use the mirror card as the base, as I did in the first one, with a nice frame around the card so that you're actually picking up the various stages of the card. That one is 5 inches square, which is 12.6 centimetres. So that will fit on. There is slight adjustments to be made in using these cards because they are machine cut, and you may well find once you've cut out your layers that you need to move them around a little bit to make sure that the margin you're looking for is all the way around the base card. I then took my Authentic Prettiness paper, cut this down again to leave a border around the mirror card, because immediately you can see that the colours are already being thrown back at you by the silver trim, which is rather delightful. I then had to decide on the embellishment, so I used the Tim Holtz flower using another sheet of the base colour, a contrasting sheet, and the back side of the Tartan Affair card. Having decided that and made up my embellishment, I then needed to find something square to put it on. So I measured and came up with a square that allows the flower to sit in it quite comfortably, as I hope you can see. And this turned out to be 3 inches square, which is 8 centimetres, and that just sits on there quite beautifully, so it's ideal. So what I'm going to do before we get on to anything else is put my silicone onto the back of the flower, which is held together by one of the white brads because I want to continue the theme through. And I'm just going to squirt a good bit onto the back of the flower. Put the lid on the silicone right away, because if you get air to it, it will dry in the tube and be wasted. And that then will sit fairly centralised in the middle of that square. Then I'm going to put this, before we go any further, onto the back or underside of the chosen paper, and I'm going to draw around that square, because that is what defines the aperture that you're going to make in the paper to best display your embellishment. And the paper measured 12.2 centimetres or 4 3/4 inches square. I don't think I mentioned that before. So having drawn around the square, I've also added my double-sided tape for quickness so that the video doesn't drag on too long. And what I intend to do using the metal ruler is draw a diagonal with the blade from corner to corner of the square that I've drawn, but I am not going to use the square from the actual line that I've drawn. I'm using that purely as a guide, and I am leaving, oh gosh, about, let me do it this way and I can tell you in centimetres, which is probably easier. Yeah, I'm going to come in 2 centimetres from that corner with my craft blade to within 2 centimetres on the other side. So holding your ruler really, really firmly, just score across to within that 2mm margin, and you can see already it's separating, and we're going to do exactly the same from corner to corner again, leaving that little margin so that you have crisscross forming. I'll put that out of the way, in the centre of the card like this. So that is very, very straightforward, I'm sure you would agree. Now, to keep this rolling and to keep the edges of the frame rounded as I have in this card. I use something round. It can be anything really. You don't want it to be too thick because you do want to be able to take your corner edge, put it around whatever it is you're using, and then roll like a rolling pin. Not to the point where you're going to actually rip any further into the card. I'm hoping you can see that, but so that when you take your curling implement out, you've got that lovely edge pulled back within the square that you've drawn on the other side. So I'm going to do that with each one of the little segments, all 4 of them. And that one back down and roll it in again. This is just to make it easier to, excuse me, work with when you're actually putting this bit together. If you've got a pre-curl in the paper, it will be better. Because this is such good quality paper and it's in effect double-sided, it does make this process a lot easier. If you use a flimsier paper, then you may well find that you need to curl again and again throughout the process to keep it right. But this really does, I've flattened it, but it really does lend itself to that process. So you see what we have now is a ready-made aperture within the square that I drew on the back. It's not being affected by the double-sided tape that I've already laid down, which is good. So that's a great start. What I want to do then is check this out, and to make sure by placing your embellishment behind the little window that you've cut, you can ensure that you don't have any gaps going on around the centre of the little square there. It fits into that cut area really, really nicely, as it should. Now what I'm going to use again is I think I want my don't know whether I would use a wet glue, I think, at this point, which I haven't brought in with me, so I'm going to improvise, and I shall put another bit of tape onto the back of what I've already done here. And what we want this to do is anchor down the centre embellishment to keep it where we want it to be. You need only anchor it in 2 places, because once this is stuck to the mirror card, you will find that it's anchored down beautifully anyway. I'm then going to peel back these 2 pieces very, very carefully. And 2, and as you saw me do before, I am going to place this over the embellishment that we want in the centre, or you can do it from behind if it's easier. There, the flowers come off. Right. Okay, let's do it again. Picked up a couple of the brads there. Okay, just by checking behind and in front, you can actually just manoeuvre this with the double-sided tape to make sure that your flower is freestanding. because when it comes to the next bit it will make it all a whole lot easier, because all you do at this point is peel off the remainder of the backing to your double-sided tape, as I'm doing here. I should have let the silicone go off a little bit more, but for the sake of the video I'm having to work with it wet, because to wait for half an hour for it to become safe to manoeuvre would just be too long for the purposes of this demonstration. So I've peeled off everything. I am now going to place this into the mirror card by lining up my corners first at the top and at the side, and if you do it at that L-shaped angle you will find that you don't go far astray with your measurements. Well, that has, but that's okay, we can deal with that. I'm going to peel that back a bit. I've just been a little bit too generous with my top border, but as crafters are never daunted by events such as these. We always come up with a solution. So what I shall do very, very carefully is try and peel off a little bit of the paper, and it really is at this point about being a bit daring and not letting it get the best of you, because with crafting you're the one that's in charge. So I tell people when they ask me, oh, I've done it wrong or what have you. It's not the easiest thing to put right, but it is possible, and I'm not prepared to waste what I've done so far. Let's just see. I'll push that up with my nail. Bring the scissors in and then just cut along that lightly scored edge to bring it back into the position that I first wanted it to be in. We don't give up as crafty ladies, we just keep going until we've got things as we want them to be. And it just goes to show, I've made this card several times, that you know, you can make errors and get away with it, because at the end of the day it is handmade, it is not shop bought, and you are allowed a few little idiosyncrasies. Now that's a really rough edge, but what I would do is put some peel off around the edge, silver or something of that nature, just to hide that away so nobody is any the wiser. So having put this onto the mirror card as is, I then get my cutting blade again. I peel back the curved edge to a little ways before the frame, make a hole, because you want to hold that beveling of the frame in place. I'm going to take it through all the layers, that's the mirror card paper, open up the legs of the brad, press it down firmly, make sure that your arms of the brad are safe and not poking out for anybody to have an incident with the feet of the brad. Again, take it back to within the outside frame of the paper, make a hole big enough to let the brad legs through, pick up your brad, push it through the layers, anchor it securely, and you can see what's happening already. It's beginning to take shape in its own sweet way. You do that to each of those 4 leaves, and this is what forms the frame for the centre of the card. I am rushing this a bit, ladies, clearly in your own time and in your own home without anybody to interrupt or cause you problems. You would take a lot more time than I'm taking here, but this is just to give you the gist of how the card comes together. So I've put the hole through. I'm now putting the last brad in situ. You can use whatever form of embellishment you would like. Obviously, it doesn't have to be a brad. It could be a flat back pearl. It could be some diamante. You could actually leave it clear if you wanted to. It is entirely down to your own choice and what pleases you, which is what crafting is all about, really. There are no mistakes. There are no strict ways to create something that you see in your mind's eye. It's very much about your imagination and how you hope things will come out. Now that's those 4 settled down nicely together. So what I'm going to do is take the original curling tool and just bring that back and bring that beveled edge back into play again, because what that does then is just gives it a really nice curly shape. I'm making sure that my flower is where I want it to be. In an ideal world, you can again use something smaller or something that suits what you're or who you're making the card for, but that is it essentially. Now we go back to the base card, making sure that the seam of the card is where we want it to be. You certainly wouldn't want to, at this stage, put your embellishment onto the card in the wrong way. So having checked that it's going to open up from right to left, I am now going to make sure that my margins are good all the way around. I might want to check again to make sure that I've got it where I want it to be. And I think I'm going to go for that way and just make sure again that the flower is doing its own thing. And then I'm going to peel off the double-sided tape, but I'm not peeling it all off. I am just peeling back, making a lip of the double-sided backing paper, as you can see. Now remembering that I've got the brad in situ, this will be a little bit awkward, but I know it's going to work because I've done it 100 times before. And having said that, I'm now placing the card topper, as we'll call it, onto the main body of the card. And I'm going to peel off whichever way it needs to go. Oops, I said it would be difficult. Okay, peel off the remainder of the double-sided tape so that it is, and it's moved again, so that it is completely anchored down. I'm going to just peel this off, ladies. Normally you would put the brads on and put the tape over after it, but I did it, as I said, for quickness this time. Put your brads through, anchor everything down, put your double-sided tape on, and then you're ready to place the card topper onto your card. Press it down firmly all around. You will see at this stage that you've got some little slits here showing, but that's not to be worried about, because this is where we get our ribbon. I'll just put these things back out of the way. Before I even cut the ribbon off the roll or whatever it is I'm using, I thread it through the tunnels that we've made. Very simply. Try not to get your ribbon twisted, because it's nice to have it proud in the corners. Lets everyone see that it's there. This is quite a forgiving card, ladies. You know, you can get away with making little areas of judgment, we'll say, because these things hide a multitude of sins, but it doesn't detract from the overall finish of your card. Put that last one through. Okay, having done that, you can then pull back, because you clearly don't want to waste your ribbon or whatever it is you decide to use. You might try to use a piece of lace or something of that nature. Make sure that it is tidy in the corners before you tie it off. I quite like, if I hold it up, I quite like to be able to see the ribbon at the corner's edge there. I just think it gives it a nice finish. I'm then going to cut that off to approximately the same length as the other side and tie a bow. Again, you don't need to pull it too tightly, because you want it to have that free flow look that is perfectly natural and very, very attractive in my opinion. But you know, if you're not great at bows, then you can always put a little bit of sticky tape under the initial knot of the bow, and that helps hold it in place. You can then just play with the bow, open it up, make sure that the ribbon fullness is in each of the loops, like so. Bring the tails forward. Now you can either cut your V or cut at a diagonal to stop the ribbon from fraying. I'm cutting at the diagonal here. And then what I shall do to keep it secure is put a little bit of the silicone yet again under the ribbon. Just a little blob to anchor down and stop that from coming undone, because by the time it goes in and out of an envelope a couple of times, I'm sure it will get a little bit loosened by that manoeuvre. And you just need something really to weight that down. I'm going to use my scissors for the moment. Oh. And then these Candy Shop Deco Dots, the really pretty embellishments from, again, the Handy Hippo site, only in black this time, to bring in the black from the centre of the card. I'm just going to put, ooh, now the glue dot's gone, Okay, we'll have a little bit more of the silicone, not too much, just enough to keep it happily in its little place that we want it to be in. 2, 3. Again, the embellishment side of things is down to your own choice, ladies. We all have things that we love to use on a regular basis. It again depends on who you're making your card for. It may be someone that's not greatly into, you know, a lot of prettiness or a lot of busyness on a card. They might prefer it to be very straightforward without too much fuss. And apart from putting on an edge to the card to cover up my little faux pas, that is the card completed. I hope you can see that, because it's just a variation on a theme. So there's one that I showed you earlier, no pun intended, whoops. The one that I've done today for the tutorial. I also did another one because I think it's quite interesting to see the effect of using different cards to put something together. And these two obviously are the sentiments. There's a flower there which has come out very prettily, I think. But what I wanted to show you as well, because I know there will be a lot of ladies thinking, oh well, you know, I'm a bit advanced of that. There is a little kicker to this video. I've got a friend's wedding coming up, and I have made a wedding card using exactly the same principle that I'd like to share with you before I put their names on it and so on. And here it is. Now I'm hoping that you can appreciate how hugely different these cards are. For this one I've used paralysed card in 2 colours. I've used paralysed paper in the very centre, which has got a goldy hue to it. I was aiming for a peony effect, which I managed to achieve with the Tim Holtz die I bought on the Handy Hippo site that I spoke to you about. So this flower is actually the peony that I've managed to put together in the centre of this card. I've put congratulations, I've used some little glittery hearts, some peel-offs. Handy Hippo do peel-offs. They've got quite a good selection there. And then I've used this beautiful ribbon to go around the little tunnels that make up the frame, but I haven't anchored these down. They're freestanding. The curl of the card actually allows that to stay exactly where it is. I'm hoping you are seeing the glitter on the card. In the centre I've used a flat back pearl, but the glitter I have used is, Gary, you couldn't get it, it's on the PC, is called Glamour Dust, and it's by the Do Arts company. It is absolutely stunning. Every which way you shape it, you have the colours bouncing back that are around the area. It's very, very fine, it's very, very light. It's probably the finest crystal I've ever encountered, and it is called a dust. Now I've put that on using another little gem that you'll also find on the Handy Hippo site, which is the Sakura glue pen, which I don't happen to... Sorry Gary, could you have a look for me? It's the one with the blue glue in it, and again that is probably one of the best glue pens that I've ever encountered. It gives you a very fine line of glue, so you can just sprinkle your glitter where you want to and it will just anchor in the glue areas. Thank you very much. It's called the Glue Quickie Pen for Papercraft. Quickie glue pen. Absolutely staggering. So all of these things, you know, the Tim Holtz die, the papers, the envelopes, the embellishment dots, the ribbons are all available on Crafty Hippo, and it has been my pleasure to work with them. On the inside of this card I've also put an embellished centre, just waiting for the verse to the bride and groom to be placed in the centre. This is a Desiree embossing folder, which I'm happy to say you will also find on Handy Hippo. I haven't seen this particular flourish, but they do have the Desiree brand on site, so please ladies, go and check it out. It's a wonderful place to visit. Even if you're only window shopping, there is always going to be something there that will grab your attention. I hope you've enjoyed what I've done. If you have any questions, please do leave a message under the video here. I'm just going to stand these cards up so that you can see them, and hopefully, oops-a-daisy, appreciate that this is a very versatile card to work with. Thank you ever so much for watching and for your time. Happy crafting, ladies. Take care. Bye bye for now.